Good evening. Good evening. It's your boy Teflon of Paid to Cost Podcast. Today's episode is all about the price of loyalty in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We're gonna talk about the price of loyalty. And and it could cost you a little bit. Um, um, in Kalamazoo, Michigan, loyalty comes at a price. But when it comes to snitches, the price is loyalty. It's a game that too many is willing to play. From the streets to the courtroom. Informants makes deals with the police. Uh, to take in, turn in friends, families. Sometimes strangers. It's crazy. But in exchange for money, reduced sentences, or even a clean slate. In Kalamazoo, this trade isn't new. It's been happening for decades, man. With real cases that expose the truth behind the silent, currency. The snitch game in Kalamazoo. How much are they really getting paid? Look, let's take a deep dive in in the world of snitches actually, and they pay off in Kalamazoo. Um, in the 1990s, it was a thing called dangerous deals. In the 90s, the snitching was more than just a business. And actually, it was a way of survival. Especially when the crack epidemic had came in. So we're not gonna sit here and say in the 90s one of those snitches because there was a lot of them. Um, Police was under pressure to lock up dealers, and dismantle gangs. But that mean informers was worth their weight in gold. You know what I'm saying? But it came with risk. You know what I mean? Case example. USV versus Daniels. That in 1996, uh, in a major drug bust, a confidential informant in Kalamazoo helped the DEA, take down a local cocaine operation. To tell you the truth, in exchange for his cooperation, he received I want to say $500 per tip. I believe that's what that was. You know what I mean? But he didn't even go to prison. You know what I mean, for his involvement in the drug trades anyway. But informers like that was often back then they was actually targeted. You know what I mean? Back then, if they found out you was a snitch, it's actually something that would happen to you. Back then in the 90s, you know, um, uh, it's different now. But in the 2000s, it's like industrialized informants. Snitching became really organized. You know, uh, 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 it became more organized, and police started using more long-term CIs that motherfucker that they've been dealing with, a motherfucker they can put on the payroll that actually works with them. You know, um, especially during larger drug operations. The money paid, the money that they was getting then, it increased because the chances increased. You know what I mean? So back then, the little money they was getting, they getting a lot more. You know what I mean? This day and age. Um, um, I'm gonna give you a case example. USB Hughes 17. USB Hughes case that involved a series of police that like when 4 months, informants was paid anywhere from like $500 to $2,500. Each controlled by, depending on the sting of the operation. But some informers made tens of thousands just for tips. But you gotta remember, whatever tip that they giving them, increase or decrease as far as the money they gonna give them. Um, Especially even if testifying, but they usually don't have snitches testify because they'll kill them. You know what I mean? But how much they, I wonder how much they getting. If you think about it, as a day, Kalamazoo and other law enforcement, they depend wholeheartedly on snitches because they don't know nothing. The police don't know nothing until they call, and then they giving information. That's when they know something. You know, um, um, especially they gonna have a lot of snitches, especially with this fentanyl shit around. Just say for instance, $100 to $500 per tip. You know what I mean, for a small drug buy. But now check it out, to $1,000 to $2,500. Look at the difference. Look at the difference. You know what I'm saying? You know, some informants Some informants, even receive weekly stipends, from law enforcement, to keep them on active on ongoing investigations. You know what I mean? You know, it that will range from like $300 to $1,000 depending on your level of expertise that they say. You know what I mean? You gotta be an expert snitch. Wow. You know, the real cost, the real cost, is actually, it's really betrayal and blood money. That's the real cost. You know, no amount of money can change the fact that being a snitch, it's gonna cost you more than just money. In Kalamazoo, informers are, they're forced to live in hiding because nobody don't want you to know that they're a snitch. Come on now. you know, that's why they don't testify. What I mean? This lifestyle, it comes with um the identity. It fucks up value relationships with their family because now, what I mean, you gotta be in hiding, so to speak. Um, it's easy to dismiss informers. That's another look caught in the criminal justice system, but that ain't what the streets look at as the price of betrayal. You know what I mean? That's just real talk. you know, uh, Blood money is too high. Blood money is the price that's too high to pay when loyalty and who you is to me is at question. Then, um, the snitch game, ain't just all about money. It's about survival. Loyalty. And the gray area between right and wrong. And as the cases continue to unfold, I mean, you got to remember what's true. The cost of truth and the price of loyalty will always be higher than the paycheck at the end of the day. You know what I mean? In Kalamazoo, snitches get paid, but that price is always more than money. You know what I mean? Back in the 90s, you can turn on your own for $500 a tip. You know what I mean? But now, man, these motherfuckers make like $100 to $2,500 just for making the call. But when the money's stacked, so is the cost. You ain't only just betraying your own, and giving up your life for a check. And once you're on that list, ain't no going back. Take it from me, Darnell Smith, Paid the Cost podcast. It's always a price to take. It's always a price to pay when disloyalty come into play. It's Teflon Don, Paid the Cost podcast. Let's get it.